We want to have a conversation. Our Health Friday conversation today is going to be approaching mental health from another side. And this is on the side of addiction. Addiction prevention and rehabilitation. Our guest is Boniface Ndirangu. He is an advocate and a champion for matters of addiction prevention and rehabilitation of those who are addicted. Boniface, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very good.
Good to have you here.
Asante sana.
Welcome back.
Asante.
You were here. The last time you were here was about a year ago or so?
Yeah. Maybe 1.5 years ago.
Yeah. 1.5.
Yeah.
That's not long.
Not long ago.
It's not so
Although
long.
I feel like I've been here because I watch you almost every other day.
So it's not every day.
So now we're going to take issue with that.
It's almost
What are
every
you
day,
doing on
actually.
those other days that you're not watching us?
We must be your every all your attention.
Yeah, by the way, I've thought if somebody was to study this Spice FM, you can write a manifesto on what you need to do.
Wow. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. That's a very good idea. Yeah, it's a very good idea. They should think about that.
Yep.
Take that seriously. Now, Boniface, karibu sana. So, I have the proverb for you. City says hi.
Good. I missed him, by the way.
He's taken a couple of days off, but he left us with the proverbs. He says, This week the proverbs have been from Senegal. We have our final proverb from Senegal today. It says, if you speak to him who understands you. If you speak to him who understands you. What's your interpretation?
Yeah, that's a nice one, huh? I'll take cue from that and not speak to stones. People will not listen. You waste your energy. You repeat things that, and the results will always be the same. So I'm taking the advice. So I'll try and keep myself to those who can listen. Ama.
You have to identify that this person is not just listening, but understanding.
Yes.
It is speak to those who understand you.
Yep.
All right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you've got to learn people basically and know this one. I want them to understand.
Yeah.
So I've got to speak in a language that they'll understand. Right?
Really good.
Yeah. So paint for us the picture of addiction in this country. When you talk about addiction, what are we referring to? It's addiction to what?
Addiction actually is defined as an obsession of the mind and a compulsion to behave. That has a spiral effect that is always going downwards. So despite the negative consequences of behavior, after an obsession of the mind and compulsion to behave, despite all the consequences, they are always repeating. They're in a loop of negative outcomes and still continuing with it. And inability to get out of that loop. That's what we consider as addiction. And
so obsession of the mind, break that down a bit.
So today's Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good day. You see, it's even called Furahi Day. Sorry. In the afternoon, Eric, if you walk around town, the air even smells different. Yeah, the people you can see there is a certain mood, a certain thinking, and a certain preparation for the evening.
Yes,
that is coming. Is going to descend this afternoon, and for some people it starts as early as now, preparing for a weekend. Where they are going to put aside the job. So it is in the mind, the obsession of an alcoholic walking around town, or a person who is developing a problem, or a person who has already habituated and is beginning to his social life and his way of living has already started with alcohol. Then you see there is an obsession of the mind, a loop. That's all they're looking for. And for some people, weekends become what they live for. Yeah.
And what are we talking about now? To be in a social environment or to actually consume alcohol and drugs? What are we talking about here? Because I can be around people and
you're looking forward to just being around people, atmosphere, the vibe.
Exactly. Or am I looking forward to be in that position where I can now have something to drink and consume, or have. Or,
well, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with the consumption and even enjoying that space.
Yeah.
In fact, in some countries they're developing now, in China here, developing quite a bit of some things called social non-alcoholic bars. So they create almost a similar environment that are in our latest clubs, but there's no alcohol being sold. So to enjoy the ambience, to enjoy a good time, there's really nothing wrong with that. In fact, it should be encouraged.
It's good for your mental health.
Yeah, it is. And a few beers for majority of the people around the world, it is not bad for people, to be honest. Majority of the people don't develop a problem. In fact, if you look at statistics around the world, it shows on average about 8 to 12% of people are likely to develop a problem. Some people are predisposed.
Of what? Sorry. Boniface. Percent of whom?
A percent of the population.
Okay, of the entire population.
Entire
Okay, that's a lot. Okay.
8 to 12%.
That's a lot.
Yes, and if you look even in Kenya, the statistics that are showing, you will see it is about that. So about 50 million people in Kenya, about 3.2 million people are consuming alcohol. 3.2 about. That's on a population of about 50 million. Don't forget, close to below 16 are about close to half the population. About 18 million people are already below the drinking ages. So when you have 3 million people out of, that is close to about 8 to 12% experimenting.
Okay. And you said are likely to develop a problem.
Yes.
So could you define that for us? When you say likely to develop a problem, are we talking about alcohol dependence? Are we talking about addiction? What are we saying?
Yes, and you know that's a progressive thing. It's like a pendulum. The problem is it's like a pendulum. So you have people who are starting to use. For certain people, when they start to use, it's very important that we have interventions that can protect them from the consequences of initial. There are some people who just drink once or have started to drink at the age of 18 and then they have an overdose or they drink too much. So we need to have interventions and planned interventions where if these people get exposed badly, they are safe to be taken home, they are not going to be abused, you know. There's no there's some safety, of some form of safety. So even interventions are not necessarily around addictions only. Interventions are supposed to be there even for experimentation, the safety of experimentation, because these people will experiment. We have about 8 to 10 million Kenyans between the age of 16 and 24. And if you look at it, Eric, that's about the time I also experimented.
That's the age of experimentation.
That's the age of experimentation. The thing to imagine that a population like that one will never be exposed in a free market economy like ours is
false.
Wishful effort. It's not, and it's not even good, because majority of those people will drink safely. Majority of those people will never develop a drug problem. Majority of those, 90% or 85% will not develop a problem. So how do you keep this spaces safe? How do you help them to help others who are developing a problem? How do you identify people who have a problem and, start to nudge them to get the help they need? Those are the discussions around that age group that we should be having. And then the people who start to develop a problem, how do we intervene? Yes. So out of the 3.2 or 4 million people who are using one drug or another as a habit, we could say about 10% of those people really do have an urgent problem. That's about close to 500,000 people.
I know we talk about this. I mean, we do. We have these conversations often. But I think it is important for us to really understand when you talk about habitual drug use.
Yes.
Still, we're dealing with issues that folks maybe not classifying alcohol as a drug, but for all intents and purposes, it is. So when you say use as a form that develops into a habit, to try and understand this, so you're not necessarily, by the time it becomes a habit, you're not necessarily deriving any pleasure from it, but it has become something that has become part of you. Am I right? Or how does that?
Actually shifts. It shifts from experimentation and moves to almost like social use. Then becomes a habit. Then it becomes dependency. Now, dependency is what is needs really urgent attention, because this person is unable to function without use, or without the substance, they are not the same person.
Okay, so what does that mean? I mean, look, I'm sorry, first to get granular, but I think it's important. What does that mean? Like, wake up in the morning and I have a cup of coffee. I'm speaking like meat and do.
Yes.
Have a cup of coffee in the morning because, it's going to jumpstart you, kick the day.
Yeah.
So when we're saying that if it's drugs and alcohol, we're saying that somebody wakes up in the morning and the way Ndu would have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, whatever, somebody needs to have a shot of something in order to be able to function?
For some, it's like that. Yeah? There are some people who have a problem that's a binge problem rather than a daily problem. A binge problem, there are people who now I'm trying to describe something different, that is not necessarily people who use every day to function. But the moment they pick up a drink, it is a stream of continuous drinking. Yeah, they can't stop. But there's some people who don't drink every day, like we have our coffee. By the way, I had mine this morning. So we can develop a dependency that is safe. There's some people who have to exercise every morning, almost like dependent on the exercise to get adrenaline going. There's some habits which, if we form, can be very helpful habits to keep away from substance abuse. So habits by themselves are not bad things. People who wake up early morning to pray as a habit, and if they don't, they have a problem. They're unstable.
They feel that their day didn't start well.
So it's habits. Good habits. A good habit. Habits that can be helpful and habits that can be harmful. If you remember that when we discussed the definition of the problem, it was an obsession of the mind, a compulsion to do, but the consequences are negative. You can have almost like an obsession, almost like a habit of using, but the consequences are good, and that is not a bad thing altogether. You get? Yeah. Let's also now look at what you are mentioning. Okay, how do you qualify what dependency is? Dependency is an inability to function without, or when having started the use becomes a loss of control. A loss of control. In fact, loss of control is a major determinant of how we examine people who have a problem. Loss of control. How? When you start to use, what happens? Why is it impossible to stop at what you had planned to stop at? You had gone out, you had planned to drink 2 to 4 beers or 8. Yeah, for those who can drink quite a bit, hard drinkers. But when you get to this level, something happens, and another one, and another one, and this becomes almost like a pattern. And every time you get into a bar, you really hadn't planned to spend so much. You really hadn't planned to stay for that long. You really hadn't used your little resources that were meant for rent or school fees for the children, or school fees for you've been given by your parent. You hadn't meant to. But once you got started,
it goes downhill from that point.
Now that is where it starts to also affect how you feel like in the morning. Because in the morning now you wake up with regrets that you want to use to stop the regrets. Or some people start to develop what you mentioned, and the tying in with mental health starts from there, because you're not too sure what happened last night. For some young girls, that's the time they probably start having sexual things with people that they hadn't planned to. And you can't quite remember whether there was a condom used. Those things stick in your mind, and you try to rub them off and you try to block them off, but they continuously now start to disturb you.
Nagging you at the back of your mind.
Yes. So those are the patterns that develop that now lead to continuous use to forget how you feel and to influence how you're feeling. When you can buy a packed substance that can confirm exactly how you will feel, then you're better off with that substance than to face your demons.
Okay. You said out of, for example, the 8 to 5% who are likely to develop, there are some who are predisposed to addiction.
Yes.
What does predisposition to addiction mean?
Yes,
what do you mean?
Thank you. There's been some arguments. There's some, and if you look at the genealogy of addiction, sometimes you look back into
the family tree.
Yes, into the family tree. And if you look, like myself, by the way, I don't know whether I've shared this with you. Someday you should ask me to share this. It's my personal own story. And when I look back, I see no one in my family ever uses without developing issues.
Wow.
Yeah? Since I got clean 21 years ago, we have only one person left in the extended family who is still drinking. They have all come into recovery. They've seen through me and seen the program and how people change when they stop drinking. And most of them
have also gone through that.
Yes,
that
they
motion.
had to.
Start and you get into a point of addiction.
It's almost automatic. It's almost like a predisposition. It's almost
And
genetic.
are we talking about immediate family or extended family?
It's extended family in the grandfather area. That's where we look. We don't look further.
On the paternal side?
Yes. If you look, not even the maternal side.
Okay.
Both sides. But you look at the grandfather, it's almost like an immediate family. Apart from your nucleus family, the other family. You start to look, you'll see an uncle who has a problem. We try to figure out that, and that's where the mental health issues also crop up. You start to see a connection between certain brain chemistries and psychoactive substances that once those two are put together, it's almost like our chemistry.
There's going to be a reaction.
They are going to
put these two elements together.
People, they don't even drink much, Eric.
Exactly.
And you see
That's
this guy,
the other
man, this guy's lost it already.
So, and then there's that. There's one, the predisposition.
Yes.
But there's an issue of tolerance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So how do you tell that you're addicted? Is it when you drink 10 beers? Or, I mean, there are people who sit and drink.
Yes.
And they can drink a lot.
Oh, yes.
But they're not addicted.
Yes.
And there are people who don't drink a lot.
Yes.
But they just hit one and they're down.
Yes.
And they now are dependent on just the one or the two. How do you distinguish this?
Well, there are people, and that's why I try to define there are different types of alcoholics, and even the alcoholics book, they mention quite a number of them, different types. And some of them, what you just described, people who, when they pick a drink, for one reason or another, they become another person. You know? See a decent lady like Ndu, all of a sudden, she's a different person during that period of time, and things can happen. So even if they drink once in a year, they are at risk.
That once
in a year.
And is it because I imagine that if it's a one-time thing, a one-time event, can you chalk it up to an addiction, or can you say that there is a chemical imbalance that happens when somebody then just consumes and they don't know, or their body just can't handle it?
Yes.
Is there a difference between that and an actual addiction? Because I would assume that addiction means that I need to go back and keep getting this thing. If I don't get it, I'm not functioning.
Yes. Yeah. A good thought process there. It's just that you have a problem with alcohol. Addiction is not necessarily the only problem with alcohol.
Okay.
It's not the only. Addiction is one of the components of the problem. If you remember, we mentioned even earlier that some people who, even their experimental stages, they develop lifelong consequences. Lifelong consequences. So it's important to have interventions for that. So this kind of alcoholic is not necessarily an addicted alcoholic. It's a person who, when they drink, for some reason, they react because of their composition. They react very different with the drink, and their life is at risk. It's the same people who could drink once in a year, but during that period of time, they drive, they probably knock somebody on the road, they probably have a serious accident, probably is the same office party, one office party of the year, they spoil their name so much, you know. Shimayote, all the respect that
everything that you've built up in the whole year
you can
goes
bring it
in
down.
this one night.
Yes. So that person needs a different kind of program to highlight the allergy. It's almost like an allergic reaction. Yeah, that's that one. Then there is, of course,
na pombe.
Yes, askizani kabisa. Hapo ndio utaona, especially people who have mental health issues. Yeah, and those are the people who come to rehab very early. Because the process has not gone through its natural progression of experimentation, social use, habitual use, dependence, and bottom end of the problem. Yeah.
Many times when people talk about addiction, they think about the hard drugs, and by hard drugs here we mean maunga and the others, injectables, or alcohol. In some cases, weed, but people don't even say this guy's addicted to weed.
No.
They just say he smokes up, right? But we say this one is addicted to the hard drugs, or this one is addicted to alcohol. But is there addiction beyond that, like habits, right? And are they also as bad or as dangerous as addiction to alcohol? Right. As we talk about this, Boniface, are there other types of addiction? We've talked about, alcohol, substance use. What other types of addiction do we have?
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yes, we are developing quite a bit of compulsive, obsessive gambling. And that's become a major problem in our country. A major contributor to actually the number of
gambling.
Yes, gambling
in casino.
Yes. Gambling in casino, and also, originally this gambling started by people buying products and winning and scratching and winning.
Yeah.
And that has a way of, acting on our pleasure centers in the brain. So that can become a serious addiction. The high of winning, the high of betting and losing is the low side of it. Yeah? So gambling has become a major problem in our country, and very correlated with mental health issues.
Really?
Yes.
How are people getting into addiction to gambling, into betting, like you're saying? Yeah.
See, the circumstances in this country are such that there is always some need for extra money.
Yes.
Most people, the costs of living and the cost and how much they earn, for a majority of the people, they always earn in need. I'm in that category also of people who would do with extra money. Yeah. So when it is made to look like just spending 100 bob could win you 17 million shillings or 170, it's very tempting for anyone just to think about it. So for most average people, we think 100 bob, okay, let me just put that one. And that 100 bob might not mean anything. The bigger part is when they win the first win. You win like 3,000 or you win another 5,000.
You invested 100.
Yes. You got 3,000.
You got a dividend of 3,000.
Yes.
That
has a very huge impact on people continuing because of the pleasure of winning.
What demographic are you seeing getting more and more addicted into this gambling? Is it young? Is it male? Is it female? Is it urban? Is it rural?
Yes, interesting. And I would like to read a little bit more about it, but I've heard even women, older women beginning to show shows, trying to bet, because they have seen. And these guys also are always advertising it, if you remember.
Yep.
They advertise it in a way that anyone looks like they can win, because it's in the numbers.
So there's testimonials.
Yes.
I mean, I did it, and here is my check.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And have you noticed that majority of the ones who are displayed that they have won a certain segment of a population that's being targeted?
There's a certain social demographic.
Yes. And if you imagine the numbers, the math, if you work, if all these Kenyans were to give you a shilling every day, that's like 50 million shillings every day. Daily. That's good money. Yeah? So if you target the people who are vulnerable. Even predatory lending has become almost like that now. That's another major area of debt. In fact, there is a friend of mine who has developed a program called Debt Anonymous. There are people who just like borrowing money and they are not going to pay. They are always in debt.
That's also an addiction.
That is also an addiction. By the way, 12-step programs have 762 forms of addictions and support systems. Yeah? Very interesting concepts. You hear, or some people who have issues around clutter and cluttering.
Yes.
Yeah, some people who are hoarders. They hoard stuff. They never let stuff go. It's a form of addiction, of holding back. And it also tells a lot about the state of mind of people.
Okay.
So depending on which addictions can manifest themselves. When it is negative, it's when because we are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this seat you put here for a long time. If you just change it a little bit, you'll be uncomfortable. And so we'll do. We if you leave, you just go to any meeting space.
Yes.
And after people have had the morning meeting, and then they go for a break, and they come back, they almost own a certain space.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're moved around, you get disoriented.
Yeah, you get disoriented.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. So we are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
So what habit are we forming? So that's also now our recovery process. What are we forming? What habit are we forming? Are they good for us? Are they negative for us?
For folks who then become addicted to whatever area that we're talking about here, from alcohol and drugs to gambling to sex, whatever it may be, is there a latent mental health issue that this action of drinking or taking drugs or performing sexual acts in whatever way that then brings out the mental health issue? Or are we saying that it's not necessarily that there be a mental health issue that leads towards this addiction? Is there an underlying experience? Is there something? Have we been able to see that there's something that even getting through the addiction, somebody will be able to point back to and say, actually, I have a problem here, and that is what is making me do this? Of course, this comes in the recovery process, but are we able to link directly mental health issues to the addiction problem that we are seeing? And let's just take Kenya for now before we even go to the world. Is there a correlation between the two?
Siamese twins, actually. They're intertwined at the hip. I mean, it's one and the same. Addiction is actually a mental health issue, if you really think about it. Yeah? It's a mental health issue. It's compulsion to behave. And that's all, it's mental.
So it's a manifestation of the mental health issue.
Yes. So the variants are what we now as therapists or people who are trying to figure out the problem and where it emanates from and what program you're going to individualize to help develop. We go through what you're just talking about. Yeah. Go through somebody's childhood to figure out any traumatic experiences. Which born were they? Some people just being firstborn, what that means in our country. We have to localize it.
Yep.
Yeah. Some people some girls especially not having a father figure and not even necessarily being abused. Yeah, because the structures have changed of our families now. Yeah, they have really changed. Some people, these things affect them. And maybe the first boyfriend they meet is an abusive one, just like the father abused the mother. There is always, especially among the younger people, there's always an underlying mental health issue. And when people say mental health issue, they probably think of ni mwenda wazimu or sijui schizophrenia. No, variants. Mental health is varying. Yeah, and there's mental health and there's mental illness. So a lot of times people confuse mental illness with mental health. Mental health is common among all of us. And sometimes you can develop an issue. Sometimes it could be anxiety issue. High achieving families, you find somebody's left behind.
Yeah.
You have your brothers, like me, for example. If a lot of times it's just good to go back to my own addiction and look at what were the causes. When I got into rehab, if you try to identify and link my childhood with why I had a problem with heroin, I would have told you, nothing. I made the wrong choices. I'm a man. I take responsibility for my actions.
Just about me.
Yes. I will stop this thing. This problem is a drug. But it wasn't. If you look at heroin is a painkiller. By the way, we were just observing. I had a group of about 65 people. Her Excellency doctors had given me at the coast. I was managing heroin addicts, and if you look, the patterns are almost the same. Serious emotional pain, and heroin is a painkiller. Yeah, and by the way, we begin to see a serious correlation between our childhood, traumatic events of our childhood, some things that we are not even responsible for, plus our own inherited mental health issues. Yeah, being addressed by the substance that we fell for. We fell for.
So there's always a correlation between many things.
Yeah, a lot of shy people, very reserved people in their childhood.
So on the other end,
alcohol played a big part in breaking the shyness. I've had you interview people here who say that's the first time they were able to date, able to dance because they had 2 left feet. Alcohol opened them up in that way.
They had confidence.
So then would be difficult to find somebody who is an addict at one level that does not have an issue with a mental health issue. Is that what we're saying? It would be difficult to find somebody who just is in addiction. Okay, let's just take alcohol as an example. It would be difficult to find somebody who is an addict of alcohol who does not have a mental health issue at some level. Are we saying that?
No, actually, there are some people who have pretty much, apart from alcohol, they are very okay with. It's just their reaction, the brain chemistry with alcohol. So alcohol is a mental health.
Is the thing now. So there's no side
reaction with you put whatever chemical alcohol is. I wasn't very good in chemistry, but it's a chemical.
Yes.
There's some math there that can be added, chemistry. And you add their brain chemistry, there is even the difference in terms of affinity. Therefore, some people, affinity is a problem. Like they want this all the time, despite it not being good for their health. Their system is groping for that. Like for some people now, like me myself, now I've quit using any drugs for more than 21 years. No alcohol, not even a sip. But carbohydrates, I find myself eating a lot of chapati, and you can see bread, carbohydrates, and they're very almost addictive. Yeah.
Just thinking about
chapati right now.
So yes, for some of us, we have that like affinity to certain things which are not necessarily good for our health. Good for our health. It's really broad.
It's broad. Yeah, have you come across people who are addicted to taking other people's things? Kleptomaniacs.
Oh, yes.
Is that an addiction?
Yes. It's and compulsive, remember?
It's compulsive.
And obsessive.
You just see something and
it's
you're
negative.
Like, you don't know what you use it for.
You don't.
But you just take it. Okay, how about lying?
Yes.
Are there people who are compulsive liars and don't take it beyond this? We're staying within the confines of this conversation.
Yes, psychopathic liars. Compulsive.
Is that an addiction?
I don't know.
Telling a lie,
pathological lie.
If it goes that, like they are obsessing about it, they're compulsive about lying for no reason sometimes. They really don't need to lie. Yeah. Now that is a psycho. Those are the other disorders are called psychopathic disorders. That goes also with personality disorders. But they are like that.
Does Kenya address addiction well?
No, I don't think so. We have taken too long to do what needs to be done. I hear that Asha Actually, just met a very good man called Hari Kimtai, the PS, just recently, and I can see that they are trying to include almost all rehabilitation centers within the new framework, which is a very good step forward. This is like 20 years behind schedule. Yeah? And the amount of money that they have put in place is going to be very difficult for and then also putting in place and paying is a whole different ball game altogether. So it is not. I'm not sure how that is going to work out, because if you calculate the number of people who have an alcohol drug problem, and then the number of spaces in treatment centers, and then the people who really need it, and the amount of money that they have allocated, still, in my opinion, not going to be sufficient. There are some other funds that have been set aside that have never really been activated, like the Rehabilitation Fund of Narcotics and Psychotropic Drugs Act of 1994. Since 1994, it's
there's a law that created a fund.
A fund, yes. Through prescription, prescriptions and heroin substances, all these banned substances, like cocaine, heroin. The funds, when Nakina Asha or other people, drug dealers, have been arrested, this money is supposed to go into a fund that helps
with rehabilitation.
Drug addicts with rehabilitation. Right. It's a law, but it has never been activated. Where that money goes from 1994 to now is as good a guess as anyone's, because there's a lot of funding, even international funding, against narcotics. That fund should have been activated by now. Our president had promised in his manifesto to activate the rehabilitation fund. He has not done it yet. That is one fund. There's another fund in the Alcohol Drinks Control Act. All these county governments, like in Nairobi, Sakaja, and his previous governments, now since 2005, they have their own law, Nairobi Liquor Licensing Act, which has 15% of all bar licenses in Nairobi. And Nairobi has
many bars. 15% of
supposed to go into
all licenses.
Yes. 15% all those years.
Whenever an institution that is selling alcohol gets a license, applies for a license from the liquor licensing, 15% of that fee
is directly supposed to go to rehabilitation of addicts.
Wow.
There is another 85% for the county and for the officials running. When we calculate this kind of money, because we have, and we see that this money is just being diverted for other government use.
So currently, where does that money go?
Where does it go?
Well, they use it. Their finance minister just turn it around for something else. That's a question. The next time he's here, you should ask him. 15% for the last 10, 15 years. Where has it gone?
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. But people get jobs. There's a board. There's always somebody to get the money and use the money for some reason. For some, there's no direct link between what the money is supposed to do. And it's not just Nairobi County. All counties have that law now passed. Nyeri passed it the other day. Yeah? That's Alcohol Drinks Control Act. That's really good money for them to use to get around the development of rehabilitation centers and supporting existing treatment centers. Now, another money is a tobacco fund. There's really good money that can be used for rehabilitation. The law also states that some of that money should be used for that. That money just disappears, and it has been around for a while.
What?
Yeah. So if you collate and bring together these resources, the Rehabilitation Fund, the Narcotics, Psychotropic Drugs, the Alcohol Drinks Control Act, the Tobacco Fund, SHA, and the new plans to have about 68,000 per rehab center per year per client, that can make an impact on the close to 500,000 people who really need rehabilitation. And it can also make even a bigger impact with prevention programs and interventions that are in between this pendulum that we talked about. Yeah?
Who deals with rehabilitation in this country? Which department? So we're hearing Ministry of Health.
Yes.
Nakada is under Interior, isn't it?
Yes.
The Office of the Deputy President currently has been handling these matters.
Yes.
So there's so much, anybody who is, there's so many county governments are all dealing with addiction and rehabilitation.
Yes.
Is there a need to centralize all this to say that there shall be one focal point to address addiction in this country?
A committee would be good at coordinates, and NACADA should be the coordinating agency. Originally, that's what it was meant to do. But now it has kind of not done that coordination very well. They can empower the counties, inform, educate the counties, have the experts that are needed to empower the counties to implement the health component of it. There is the prevention component that needs to be done by the education ministry. So you need to empower teachers or have a group of people who can really help synchronize our education system with good attitudes and education about addictions. That is a prevention program. That is from way down all the way to, and I think something is being done there, but we need better. In fact, I noticed there was a professor who came here from Israel, and you talked to him, and he was a very informed person.
What was his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Human behavior among school-going children is a scientific research and a process through which you can monitor children's behavior and monitor the way you monitor mathematics as they grow up, the way you monitor English as they grow up. You monitor their behavior. Monitor does not say you tell them how to behave. You're just watching what is it going on with this kid. You're watching their moods. There's a criteria that teachers can be taught. And this over time can be a very helpful guide in developing programs. Can also tell you what behaviors lead to what type of people. Eventually, if you follow longitudinally. Yeah? So having that...
Don't tell katakuwa klepto.
Do we?
Yeah, but one of the biggest problems we have in our country, and this I think, I don't know if I'm the only one who keeps saying, is our allocation of human resources, perhaps one of the worst thing we do. Wrong people doing the wrong jobs. Have people who have no clue what they are doing. They're learning on the job. While we have experts, who could really help on the job. You can just imagine, as I mentioned earlier, this your show is a very good place to investigate and read and learn on how this country can be helped. If you really took time to look at the last, how many years has this show been? You can pick a lot on what needs to be done.
So are we looking at severe levels of addiction in Kenya? Are we looking at severe levels across the board that really then do need a lot more attention than is currently being applied?
Oh yes. And this is an ending. Yeah. And you mentioned something like, if anything, if you look at the maths of addictions and how much it contributes to the economy, when we do nothing about addictions, what I hear is that we are trying to do something. Countries that don't do anything about addictions, they lose close to, on average, 6% of their GDP. 6 to 8%. That is a science that has been done, mathematics, and we have not even studied our own cost of addictions. Most countries are doing that, calculating cost of addiction. And that's what our university should help also with this, calculating these costs. What are the costs, direct costs, indirect costs? How much do we pay eventually, even when we do nothing?
Yeah.
When we do nothing. When we do something, it is possible to save close to 3% of that. And 3% of our GDP in our country is close to about 800 billion. 3% or more of our GDP. That's what you stand to save if you input some measures. It is also a known fact now around the world that 1 shilling used in addiction prevention will save you about 100 shillings in treatment. Yeah? So how much? Another one would save about 10 in terms of people who go to actual addictions. A simple thing also to look at is people like me now. I would be dead long time ago if I hadn't gone to rehab. I'm a former heroin addict. Lived in the streets for 3 years. Came out with a number of diseases from the streets. If I hadn't been helped with, I remember for me it was at the time 15,000 a month. That is 45,000. If I hadn't been helped, you see, I would not be a parent now. I would not be contributing to the economy. I'm now, I fuel to come here.
And you're looking at a situation where you couldn't do that before.
Yes, we couldn't.
Well, Boniface, thank you. Thank you for the insights this morning. Asante sana, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
You're helping many. Boniface Ndirangu is an addictions prevention and rehabilitation champion. We've been talking about addiction, the cost of addiction in this country.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.